Hi, I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel, and today we're going to be doing something cool. We're going to be installing Fleece Performance's air intake heater kit for the 2007.5 to 2024 6.7 equipped Dodge Cummins. So you bought a Dodge truck with a 6.7 Cummins in it, and you're all excited about it. And then you find out that there is one of the biggest light duty failures out there today is the grid heater power bolt falling into the intake and wiping out the entire motor. So enter Fleece with their new intake air heater kit. This kit eliminates the grid heater in the intake plenum plate, so you don't have to worry about that bolt falling down into your engine and taking your engine out and costing you tens of thousands of dollars. And this is a really nice kit because Fleece has designed this to be one part number fitting the 2007.5 to 2024 pickup trucks and the cabin chassis, which is a big thing as well. And everything that you need to do the entire install comes inside of the kit. So let's go over all the parts. So first off, what I really want to concentrate on is the intake horn itself. So the new intake horn from Fleece comes with provisions to include the primary intake air heater coil that comes with it. It also gives you a spot to add a second one if you live in extremely cold climates and you just want that secondary intake air heating option. Very nice, very sleek, low profile intake horn. This intake horn is designed as well to accept your factory EGR valve that goes on top of it. The factory throttle valve bolts right up to it. So in fit and finish and fit and form, it is as close to a stock as your stock intake as you're going to get. Cool thing about Fleece is Fleece has actually purchased a foundry, so they're actually casting these intake horns themselves and then doing their final machining in their Indiana facility. So we all know and love the Fleece machining processes that they've got going on. So that's what you're getting with this intake horn. Again, comes with provision for your EGR. And then you've got spots for 2 intake air heaters and then hooks back up to the stock throttle valve. So everything there is, you don't have to make any modifications to your cold side pipe. Everything fits up there and works great. Then you've got the plenum plate. So the plenum plate comes with all the provisions for map sensor, intake air temperature sensor, all the things. And we'll talk about that as we go along through our installation and then the different years of what you'll be seeing there. And then this is open for maximum airflow, no grid heater here, and no bolt to fall in your engine costing you a motor. Fleece has always done a really good job with their packaging, but one thing that they've done here is they've color coded the different bolts and the different components to the kit, the ancillary products that come along with it. And inside their instructions, that corresponds to those colors, telling you where the bolts go, when you'll use certain copper washers. And again, that's something that we're going to go through as we go through this installation. But just wanted to show you the things that Fleece is going through and that they're changing just to make their packaging top notch. Their all new hardware is included for this. You will not retain any of your hardware. And then we've got, Fleece does their own wiring. They've got their own wire producing capabilities in-house as well, not only with their machining capabilities. So we've got an extension wire that comes here. I believe this is the map extension harness for certain year models, and they give you a new power wire for the intake air heater coil, so you get it brand new in that. And then it comes with these ancillary gaskets as well through the kit. Now, on the EGR side of this, it takes different gaskets for different years. That's, again, we're going to talk about that in the video, but they give you every single one of these so you won't run into any problems with that. And then obviously your gaskets, you will get a new intake plenum gasket, you're going to get a new throttle valve gasket, and then you're going to get a new intake horn at the intake plate gasket comes with it. So you're not going to have to run out and look for any gaskets in the kit. Everything is going to be provided to you right here. So Fleece has done a lot of research to make this a 1 SKU part number. One of the nice things about this is this retains all of your stock factory fuel lines. You do not have to replace any of the factory fuel lines. The intake horn is designed to accept all of the factory fuel injector lines just as they came off the truck. So if you're on the side of the road, you have a failure of an injector line, you don't have to worry about getting one from an aftermarket company. You can run down to your local auto parts store or Cummins dealer, grab a line, get on the road and get back going. So that's a really nice feature of the kit. But the increased airflow that you get with these intake air heater kits is one of the biggest draws to them. Not only while you are removing the dangers of the grid heater power bolt falling into your intake and taking your motor out, the amount of airflow increase that you get into the motors is awesome by just getting rid of the grid heater out of the way of that. So we're going to get set up here and get ready for our installation, and probably going to take us a couple of days. We'll just kind of peck through it and try to go through it and just give you every little detail that we can on this install and take you along with us. So very good friend of the company let us borrow his truck for the week this week to do this install. This is a 2021 Ram with 6-7 Cummins in it, obviously. This is just a normal old pickup truck and 3/4 ton, so that's what we're going to be doing our install on. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to basically break this video up into a couple of different parts. The first part of the video is going to be removing the intake horn, and then the second part of the removal portion of the video is going to be removing the rail and then the intake air plate. So we're going to start with getting our horn removed, and the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to isolate your batteries on the truck, because we will be working with several sensors. We're going to be working with the power cord to the intake air heater and so on. So you've got to get your batteries isolated. We have that done now. So first thing you do is just simply remove this little decorative cover off the front of the motor, and first thing you've got to do in that instance is remove the dipstick. And you guys have got an older truck here, remember on this dipstick it can get brittle on you, so you know, try to be as careful with it as you can. So we're gonna just sit that right there. And then with our 8 metric, we'll go ahead and pull our cover off here. They're in all 4 corners right there. Pretty basic stuff. So we'll just lift it up, slide it past the oil gauge tube, and then we need to put our dipstick back in for later. And then this is going to give us access to our EGR crossover tube, which is what we're going to remove next, and we'll go over that with you. So then we'll be removing the EGR crossover tube, and then we're going to work on getting this intake horn off. So Whit and I are going to do something a little bit different with our install videos. I want to kind of give you a quick overview and point to what you're going to be removing, because an installation is just that. It's removing components and it's installing components. So if you don't want to have to watch the actual installation process, you know, this right here, this EGR crossover tube, this is just basic bolts. It's 2 clamps, it's a bolt in the middle, and then a wiring harness. So you can skip through it if you need to. Just want to explain what we're doing now. So I'm just going to show you where your fasteners are and what you need to remove to be able to get this component off. Again, we're removing the EGR crossover tube here that services from the EGR cooler. It crosses over here to your intake horn, and then you have your EGR valve right here that allows the exhaust gases to go into your intake airflow. So to remove this crossover, you have the passenger side clamp at the cooler. This takes an 11 metric to remove it. Dead center of the EGR crossover tube, there is a clamp that holds it. That is held to the block or the rocker box, however you want to look at it, by an 8 metric bolt. It's a small bolt there. You can get to that with what I've got right here. 8 metric on a short extension gets you to it. And then over here at the EGR valve itself, there is another clamp, 11 metric, to loosen that clamp up. And then the exhaust gas temperature sensor is right here. It has a wiring harness that goes underneath and then connects back up right here to its connector. The connector on these newer trucks, like this truck is a 21. I'm going to try to get down here and get a shot of this. They're trying every year to make connectors to where you just can't work on them. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. This has a black plastic keeper that keeps the slide lock. To unhook that connector, you just simply pry away on the black portion of it, that's right here at the top. Start at the top and just pull it back towards the intake, and then that'll allow it to release from the bottom, and then you just set that aside, and then you can put it back on if you so choose to when you are installing it. That wiring harness has a push Christmas tree connector. It's got it pushed into the guard right here, and it's got to slip over the bolt right there. Little connector. To do that, you just pull straight away on it like this, and that's got it loose. Then we'll get our Christmas tree connector, then take our clamp off, and then we can take our crossover tube out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set the GoPro up to show you the EGR coming out, and I can talk through that as we're working on it in case we run into anything there. All right, we're going to start working on taking our EGR crossover tube out now. And first thing I like to do is get my little 8 metric bolt here from the clamp at the very front, because pretty much a 99% chance that I'm going to drop it. So I'll just push down on my upper radiator hose, and that gives me enough slack to be able to run my socket. All right, so it's a small 8 metric, probably easiest to show the GoPro here, small 8 metric headed bolt there. So that's got our clamp at the front loose. Now we just go ahead and remove our 2 clamps at either end of the EGR crossover tube. Again, these are 11 metrics to open the loosen the tube up. You guys, if you've got older trucks, and you've seen me do this in several different videos, you can use a heel bar, small heel bar, to access that, and not to access it, I'm sorry, to pry the ears away to where they'll rotate, because they'll probably be stuck on you, like this one right here is a really good example. And it probably won't take much, so I'm just going to take the heel of that ratchet and just pop it with my hand. And of course, it's going to need more than that. So flat tip screwdriver. There we go. And that loosens it up though. So these clamp styles, they've got 3 years to them, and you just pop those to get those loose from there. So the only thing left now is our EGR temp wiring harness. So you've got a Christmas tree pin on this. So just use the right tool and work back and forth on it to get it dislodged from this shield. If you think it's going to break, you don't want to fool with it. They make zip ties now that have got these already made onto them. So when you go back, you can replace it with those, and then it looks just like factory. But then you had a connection down there at the bolt, a little slip over that goes over the bolt that we got undone there. So now, and I don't know the year breaks on this, I'm going to guess at this, so don't beat me up in the comments. The 18 truck that we did a similar video on for this did not have this little black plastic keeper, so I'm assuming, and it's very much an assumption, that this came into play in the 19 and up trucks. Maybe it's 20 or 21, I don't know. This black keeper is keeping you from being able to actuate the slide lock correctly on this connection for your temp sensor. So to remove that, you just start at the top and just pry away from it on the top. Don't break it, and then it just pops right off there. And the way that engages, you can see the saddle of that is down, so you can actually push up on it. But I just found that pulling the top side of it away does it, and then of course it hooks in at the bottom. You can see how it engages right there. Hopefully you can see that, and then that covers that up. We will be putting that back on because we don't want anybody to know that we were here. And then just pop your slide lock up just a fuzz. And when I work on these, the Snap-on's got these, and I'm sure there's a bunch of aftermarkets that do it too. There's a little rounded, this is an O-ring pick. It's rounded, it's smooth, it doesn't tear anything up, it doesn't mar. It's really nice when you're working on these connectors. I know there's guys are doing it a lot of different ways, but that's just something to think about. Just something dull like that doesn't mess these connectors up. So Once you've got your slide lock up, you can push on the release portion. It's on the white part of the connector. You just push it down, and then you can simply remove the connector such as that, so the male portion there. So we should have enough movement in our clamps to be able to pop that off. If not, we can just remove the clamp to make it easier on us. Leave the nut on it and just disengage it from the ear like that. Now these have a gasket on here. Fleece does supply you with the gasket, but you don't want to lose it in the engine bay. So same thing here. Now we can just move the EGR pipe one like this. It should disengage as such. Rotate that. The clamp keeps wanting to go back and fight me there. So there it is, disengaged, and you can see that the gasket stayed on both ends of it, so we can remove that later on. But here it is, the way it's come out, so we can set that aside. Clamp right there. I was gonna say I'll leave it right there, but better not. Better remove it, because I will be changing out that gasket. So what I'd actually do is there, just push it back, and I was wrong. That gasket is actually on the crossover, so good to go there. So with the EGR tube out, and we will come back, and again, we're just working on the intake horn here. So we're going to work on getting everything cleared out from the connection at the intercooler pipe to be able to remove that. All right, I wanted to talk on the gasket that's on the passenger side of this EGR crossover tube. I didn't do a very good job of explaining that. That gasket is a very thin steel gasket, and it was actually still on the tube right here. I was checking to make sure I hadn't dropped it, but what I did to identify that as to which side it was actually on is I just took my finger and put a little pressure against it. It popped off. This comes in the fleece kit, as well as the gasket for this side. You can see that gasket stayed. This is one of those composite gaskets. It stayed on the EGR valve side, so we'll clean that off when we get to it and put our new gasket on. Those gaskets do come in the kit. Alrighty. So just to walk through what we're doing next we're taking the this little riser bracket mount that holds the dipstick to the intake horn. So we have a 10 metric bolt here at the top that attaches the dipstick to this little riser piece. Then we have another 10 metric that is right here below it, and then underneath of the EGR temperature sensor, there's a bolt right there. The EGR temp sensor, was now on these 19 plus miles, I believe, is going to be routed through this bracket right there. So we're going to push that out. That is just held in by a Christmas tree pin, just a little push pin. Then you have a push pin at the top right here on this wiring harness, and we'll pop it loose as well, and then that'll get us to where everything's loose there, and then we can just bring this bracket out and get that out of our way. So I'm going to set the GoPro back up, and then we'll cut back in showing you removal. So we're going to start with our wiring push connectors. So the main harness that goes across the side of the bracket closest to the engine is what we'll start with. So we'll just pop it up like so, and then on these newer trucks, the EGR temp is right there. So we'll pop it out too, have it ready. So now we can go after our 10 metric bolts. So remember, there is one here on the bottom of the horn, then on the top, and then on the side. Different years are going to have different configurations of this. Again, these newer model trucks are going to have this wiring harness for the EGR temp. You won't see that on the earlier trucks in that position. So we'll probably wind up, we really honestly here at Thoroughbred, we've been a little 6-7 poor around here, so I don't have a early model truck. We're looking for one, so like an 07 to call it a 9 truck we're looking for to do one of these videos on. So that's kind of what we're looking for, because I'd like to go back through and do this video again for the early trucks. So because I've done this on a 18 and now a 21 truck, but I'd like to have an earlier model as well. I will tell you one daggone thing. All of this new truck, seems like they have upped the torque values for sure on some of these bolts. Pull everything out here. Like a dummy, when I started this shot, I did not bring my impact gun with me. So here we are. And the 3 bolts that we just took out there, your long one is your very outside bolt closest to the EGR valve that actually holds the intake plenum to the intake runner, or the intake horn to the plenum there. Your medium-sized bolt is going to be forward side here at this standard, and then your shortest bolt holds the oil dipstick to the bracketry. So just slide the bracket out, and there we go. We're getting closer to the intake horn bolts. We'll show you how to do that throttle valve electrical connector, because I won't be able to show you inside the truck. So it's got these new little fancy black plastic covers that keep you from sliding the locking portions. So all you do with it is just grab it by the back side and lift up, and that disengages it, and then you can set it to the side, and then you just push your slide lock to where you can actuate your little retainer here, and then you push your retainer and slide off. So that's the exact way that the throttle valve electrical connector is set up on these 19 plus trucks. So we're going to reset up the camera, and we're going to pull everything off. One thing I forgot to make mention of, and I'm going to let Whit get down here and show you, obviously let Whit reset up here. This 11 metric bolt, this is what this 11 metric bolt on this clamp is the clamp that holds the intake horn to the intercooler tube. So all we're going to do is we're going to loosen that up, and we're going to go around it and loosen it up real good. Sorry, I was hitting the microphone there. Go around it and kind of loosen it up real good, and then we'll be ready to remove our intake horn. Okay. Yep. Not going to do the removal shot on this, but I like to take this plate off of the intake horn, and there's a 10 metric nut right here that you have to remove, and then a 13 metric bolt right here that you have to remove. The only reason why I do this is it just gives me, for our video purposes, it's going to give you all a better line of sight of loosening up the clamp for the intake pipe and showing all of this turning, and then when you're inside of the engine bay, it gives you access to the intercooler boot clamp a little bit better, and then you can work around it with a small with something to loosen that up. That's the only reason why I remove it. Not necessary to have to do it, but it sure makes it a little bit nicer, and it's a step that doesn't take you a lot of time. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start working on the intake horn. The intake horn is still attached to the engine by 5 10 metric headed bolts. You have 1 in each of these back corners, and then 3 along the intake runner here. You can't really see that if you're working on it at home. Obviously you're going to see it. There's 1 right there, 1 in the middle, and 1 in the back. Here's the setup I use to get those 5 bolts out. I'll use just a normal 10 metric on a locking extension, because you've got to get around the wiring harnesses here. But the back corner bolt is a little bit more difficult. You guys might not have this at home. If you do, you'll understand. But this is a universal 10 metric socket. You can use a 1/4 inch drive, 10 metric socket, and a universal. Should get you down through here and to it. We'll get you there. I don't remove the EGR valve off the truck, but I will go through and loosen up the 4 bolts that are attaching it to the valve, so that way it's already loose when I come out. And then our electrical connectors. So we have 3 electrical connectors on the intake horn. We have the EGR valve controller itself. We have the map sensor, which is back here on the back, and then down at the bottom we have the throttle valve control. The throttle valve control is the only one that's really kind of got a tricky connector set up, and it's just like this temperature sensor was up on the front, and we're going to set up on the camera tripod and show you that. On the back of the EGR valve controller there is a red lock on it. You'll just slide that lock out and then depress that and remove it. On the map sensor there's no There's no little security catches on that. That one just is pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to try to bring the throttle valve out and show you, but the connector is the same as it is on the EGR temperature sensor probe, and I'm going to show you that up top with a better camera angle there. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do our electrical connectors. Remember, there's 3 of them. There's our EGR valve, there's our map sensor, and then there is our throttle valve down at the bottom, which is going to be a little bit more tricky to get to. So first one on our EGR valve here, there's a red locking tab on the very top of it. I just slid it out, and then that allows me to disengage the connector. And then the map sensor, it doesn't have anything funky on it. It is straight away just a push to remove connector. So that has those 2 out of our way. And now our bottom one, like we said, it's got the on our throttle valve has got the there's a little plastic keeper on it. So we're gonna go down, we're gonna pop it off real quick. We're gonna try not to drop it. And the wire side of these little I'm gonna call them doors. The wire side of it is where you actually prise it, and the 2 of those little keepers are the same size and everything, so you don't have to worry about nothing there. So now getting to the slide lock on it is a little bit of a challenge, but we were able to do it. And now you just push, pinch it, and disengage it. So there we go. So there's all of our electrical connectors. Now, one thing I did not make mention of, and I'm sorry, but on the very back of the intake horn on these trucks, there is a wire push pin here. So you just use your push pin tool to disengage it from the back. Work to get that right. Don't be a hack. Don't just break it off. That harness loose, and then we'll start with our bolts. Now, one thing I do on these is I loosen up my EGR valve. I don't remove it in the truck. I know that Fleece's instructions kind of show you that. I don't do that. It doesn't matter really which way you do it. I leave it on, but I just loosen it up while it's on the truck here. And then I've actually got my 11 metric on, so I'm gonna go ahead and loosen up my hose clamp at the intercooler. Everybody knows how to do that. Then I'll make sure that the clamp loosens up by just going around it and simply working on it. Nothing new or ground shattering here. And where this is kind of a newer truck, we won't have any problem with this. But what I like to do, again, I've got my smooth pick here. I like to take that pick and just go around the intake boot where it attaches to the horn itself, and that really helps to loosen it up, and it makes it to where you don't have to rock that so much. Now you can actually, on these 6.7s, you can actually just push down on that tube and disengage it from the horn and not have to worry about it. But if you've got something smooth like that, really makes it a whole lot nicer. So we'll switch back over here, and I'm going to get my 10 metric, and we'll go after our 4 bolts at our EGR cooler. And again, all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to loosen these 4, or on the EGR valve, I apologize. I'm just going to loosen those real quick. That way, when we're working on it on the bench, we don't have to need it to be supported. So now I'll go after my bolts for the intake horn, all 10 metrics. Fourth one at the back here. And then our troublesome one is the very back one. And like I was saying, I have got a little 10 universal on a 1/4-inch drive, so 8-inch long extension. I don't know the brands that do these, but these universal sockets, if you've never invested in these, you really should think about it. You guys that have got access to a Snap-on truck, this is, I've got the set, but this is the 10 metric swivel from Snap-on, the universal 1/4-inch drive. Makes your life so much easier, especially on obviously newer vehicles that are just, everything is an absolute pain to work on. This really makes it a lot easier. If you're only going to buy 2 of these, I would buy the 10 and the 8. And there you go. Okay. And these bolts, what I like to do, I like to use my magnet and pull them out. Your front 2 you can get to pretty easy, but the rest of them, you're not going to get it so easy. Okay, that should have that. So here's our front 2 bolts. And then I think I can get to this one as well. So there's 3 of them. Now, I'm going to get our magnet. Pull out our middle here. And then we'll pull out our fun one back at the back. Oh yeah, of course, needs just a little bit more on it. A lot of you guys are going to say, hey, why don't you just unhook that PCV line? Well, the nub for the PCV line is right in the way of the bolt, so it doesn't do me any good at all to remove the PCV line. Now, surely to goodness, that'll have this. Got it. There we go. All right, so our intake horn is ready to come out now, so we're just going to kind of move it away and bring it right out, just like so. So this just goes to show you that you're never too old to learn something. I bet you I've taken off 10,000 intercooler pipes in my lifetime, and I saw this and I was just kind of scanning through Fleece's instructions, because when I do a video, in all transparency, I like to try to follow along with the manufacturer's instructions, so it just makes it easier for you all, for the consumer, to kind of line up with. But I've always taken, shop rag, you've seen me do it many times when I have an intercooler pipe, just lay it down in there. But I saw something cool in their instructions and I never thought about doing. They just took a shop rag like so, laid it over the intercooler pipe, and then took their loose clamp, set it down there like that. Perfect. I really like that. So just something cool. And yeah. So what we're going to be doing now is we're actually going after this foam isolator, and I don't know what year they started putting these on these trucks. I know the 18 truck that we did had this on here, but
we're going after that, and in doing that, we're going to be going ahead and getting our wiring harness out of our way. So what I'm doing here is it's just as important to cover up this grid heater to make sure nothing falls in it. And you can see this is a 30,000 mile truck, and we'll show you outside of the truck as well. This is a 30,000 mile truck, and look at the amount of soot buildup inside of there already. That's an air killer. I mean, that is an airflow killer. Just imagine what these trucks look like with 100,000 miles on it. So just a blue shop rag just to lay over that, and to keep us from dropping any unnecessary soot chunks, to be honest with you, in there, or just anything that could drop in there and cause you some harm. So our next step is going to be to get the power line. So you can see our grid heater power line is connected right here. That's a 10 metric nut that holds it right there. We're going to be getting this power line out of here. It's got 3 clips, looks like. 1, 2, actually just the 2 clips. But we're going to go ahead and get this dipstick clip undone as well. But I want to show you on this dipstick clip right here for the main wiring harness. I'm going to show you how these clips come undone. So these clips, they've got a tab on the outside of it, and you can kind of see it. It's wider than the clip is, and that's the tab that you just pull to release, just like that. Works really, really well. This one, the guy put it on the back side of it at the plant, so appreciate that from him. We've got one down here that we can get. Use my better lighting disaster. I'm terrible at this one-handed too. Clip right there, and that gets that one out, and then I'm going to need my other hand to get this out. So we'll get our 10 metric, and we will loosen up this bolt here, and then we'll show you on the big camera the line coming out and just getting out of our way. So we're just removing the nut on the power wire for the grid heater. Not many threads on it. The nut stays with the cord there, so it doesn't come loose. So see our power cord, and we'll just simply move it out of our way and just get it out of sight there. So again, what we're doing is we're making our pathway to get this rubber isolator out. So I'll switch back over to the GoPro here and show you a few more of the steps here. I'm going to go ahead and get this bell trip main wiring harness connector, and I only do the passenger side of this one closest to the valve cover here. So to release this, to release our bell trip on the back side of it, there is just a little tang here, and you've got to depress that, and as you're depressing it, then you can actuate the bell trip, which is what I've always called them, and then that pushes out the that'll push out the male connector here. Be really careful with these things, guys. These get brittle, and breaking this connector is just going to make for a bad day for you. So I'm going to ease that out here, just like so. And then right underneath the cowl here, there is a little push pin that attaches that to the cowl. And all I'm going to do is just kind of ease that out. Like that, and then that allows me to take that male end of that main wiring harness and just kind of set it out of my way, and that gives me quite a bit more room right there, and really that's about all I need. You can take the female off too. There's a clip inside of here to get the female end of it out, but I find that we can do it just like so here. So we're going to continue to work on the wiring harness. Next, I'm going to set the lights up, and what I'm going to be showing you there is getting the wiring harness for the recirculation valve over here, crankcase sensor. Then we've got another sensor here. Then we're going to just take this wiring harness, and we're just going to get it loosened up and get it to where it's out of our way. Then we're going to remove the 2 crankcase vents, and I will relight this so you all can see it and then we'll be able to get our isolator out there really easily. All right, got more light here, so I want to go back over this again. You're going to be removing the exhaust back pressure sensor, the valve motor, this sensor here at the crankcase filter, and these have got our little friend here, the little clip that they start putting on these trucks now. So we got one right there. We're going to remove it like we showed you. Another sensor on the back here that we're going to be removing. Same thing with it. It's got one of those little plastic clips, and then the wiring harnesses are on studs through here. So to remove those from the studs, you just simply pick up on them and try to keep them even as you drive through, as you pull through. So then that's just going to allow us to take this harness and set it over here, and that's going to have just about all of our harness other than our main connectors at the injectors loose, but that'll allow us to remove our two crankcase filter lines. These are plastic, and they're rubber lines. They're on plastic right here. All you have to do is simply pry against them with something dull so you don't mar it up. Same thing right here. And I can remove this without having to take those fittings out, but if the fittings get in your way and you want to make it easier, you can actually spin those fittings out that are going into the CCV filter there, and get them out of your way. But not necessary, but it's there if you want to use it. So we're going to switch back over to the big camera as we kind of talk through all of this. So I'm going to start with the motor connection here, and that's just got a simple slide lock on it. So we just go ahead and trip that back, and then we can remove the connector. All right, then we already removed our little black plastic doohickey there, so we just got to slide our lock over. To remove that sensor. Same thing over here on the back pressure sensor. It's got our little friend, little keeper on it. So we'll remove it. It's got a slide lock on it just like the other ones do. Just to go all the way, and then pinch and pull. Just like so. It's on a stud right there. Remove it. On the back side of the valve cover here, it is on another stud. Remove that. And then a good portion of that harness is out of your way right there. And we've got one more sensor back here at the back of the valve cover. It's got our friend, the little black plastic clip on it. Makes for this job as a total of 5 of those. Push your slide lock in like so. Just a little bit more, and voila, that has got a large majority of our harness over there, and that gives us a pretty clean path to get our sound dampening piece of foam out. So Whit's going to hand me back the GoPro. I'm going to show you the GoPro, everything that you're looking at right there, and then show you on getting these hoses off. I've got one that's already loosened up here, so should be able to show you pretty easy where we're at. All right, just want to show you the two crankcase vents. They're right here and right here on the front as well. My front one's already pretty well loose, but it's the hardest one to see because of that main wiring harness. But really, all you have to do with it is just get some sort of a prise tool, something that's dull, to get that started. And once it starts just like that, you can pretty well grab it and work it off there. Just be careful because everything's plastic here, it's brittle. Same thing with this fitting back here at the back. I'll get a dull little O-ring roller right here, and what I'll do is I'll just keep moving around that until I get it off. So then we'll have to use both hands here. I'll get those 2 lines off, and then we'll come back and show you the isolator coming out. So I've got both of my crankcase lines off here, so it really gives us quite a bit of room to manipulate that. All right, so what I was talking about, you can see I've got both of the crankcase vents lines loose, and I've got them tucked over out of the way. But this nipple right here going into the filter right there, you can actually spin it out. It's a 19 metric. Make sure you use something 6 points so you don't tear anything up. Then you can actually spin that fitting out real easy, just like so. And that's going to make your life so much easier getting that piece of foam out of there. So you can see that fitting right there. Put that over here in our box, and you can see the way we've got our wiring harness set back here. So we should be able to just fish our little isolator out. All right, so what we've done with our isolator is you basically got to take your arm and reach back in here all the way to the back of it, and as you lift up on the back of the isolator, you can just kind of keep bringing it forward like so, and there you can see it's a pretty good long piece there. So you just have to really support it from the back to be able to bring it out correctly there. So that's really got us with a good bird's eye view of our next steps here, which will be to go ahead and unhook this main wiring harness here, and we will do that and set that out of our way, and then we're going to be after the fuel lines. So what we're working on now is we're working on the injector connectors that are going to be here on the valve cover. So we've got our injector connector right here, we've got our rail pressure sensor right there, and then we've got another injector connector on the back side here. And Whit and I were talking about this. We're going to show you how to remove this bulkhead connector as well to get it off of here. So our injector connector right here, you can see right down the center. All you need to do is just press that and then lift up on the harness. This is really hard to do one-handed, but I use my flat tip screwdriver just like that. And then I actually like to take another flat tip screwdriver right here to the bottom of the wiring harness and just prise up on it, because that's just a little bit cleaner than grabbing the wires and pulling. So our rail pressure sensor, you can see right here, you see the yellow, there's a yellow tab right here. You just need to pull up on the little yellow tab using, again, another straight screwdriver or something. And then once you've unlocked that, you simply pinch down on it, and that disconnects your rail pressure sensor, and then we'll get our back one here. And then we've also got a intake air temperature sensor back here, and that was just got a standard slide lock on it and pinch, but we'll show you coming out. So let me get these disconnected. I'm going to start again with this wiring harness at the injectors, and I'll disconnect it, and once I get these connectors undone, I'll show you each one of them and how the mechanism of them works. All right, I told you guys I'd give you a walkthrough of the connectors, so we could do it just like a little close-up of them. So your injector connectors here, you can tell the way that harness hooks, you can tell the way that clips. So you just got the center, so a little flat tip screwdriver, press down on that, and then just pull up on the harness and you're good to go. The intake air temperature connector, nothing really fancy about it. I'm going to show it to you, other than it's got that red clip on it. It is a bear to get to because of the dipstick support, but I'll show you that here in just a second. And then we have our rail pressure sensor. This is, to me, one of the funkiest little connectors in light duty diesels right now. So this is your locking tab, and it's disengaged to remove it, and it is very, very flimsy. So if you push it in, that locks it. I don't want to do it back because it's just like I said, it's just real chintzy, I don't know. So you pull that tab out, that disengages it, and then you push on the back of it very lightly, and the rail pressure sensor will come the connector will come loose. I hate the connector, but I will say this: thank you to the engineers, to the Cummins engineers that moved that forward, so we don't have to fight that on the back of the rail anymore. You guys are awesome. And then we've got our back injector connector, same thing here. And then I promised I'd show you that bulkhead connector. The bulkhead connector, how it comes loose, so it's got its this little perch right here where it connects to. You can see right there in the middle of that, there is a black plastic clip. Okay, so to get that clip, a nice little flathead screwdriver right underneath of it, and then prise directly up on it. It's like so, and then push the clip towards the passenger side of the truck, and then everything comes loose. So you're loose right here. One little thing I've got to do is I've got a 10 metric bolt right here that is holding the dipstick standard on. I've already got it loosened up, so I'm going to remove that. Now be very careful with this, because you don't want to put a lot of undue pressure on that dipstick, because it can break, and then it's broke there at the block, and then blah blah blah. It makes an easy job a hard job. So that will move out of the way just enough there, as you can see, to be able to get the rail out of here, and we got plenty of room to work. So now it's time to go after our lines.
We are rolling that on all ends.
We're rolling. We're hot. We are hot. Okay. All right. A couple things I wanted to make mention of that I didn't mention before I left you there. Your bolt that holds the dipstick on, you actually want to leave the bolt in there, and I'm going to show you. There is a push pin back here, a little Christmas tree push pin. Let's see if I can get to that. That is holding our main wiring harness. We're going to remove that, and then this clip right here is just another holder that attaches our smaller wiring harness for our injector side and to our bulkhead connector. So to undo this one, you just squeeze it on either side like so, and it'll give you enough slack to disengage it right here at the top. You'll kind of see how it comes loose. And I am not good at this. You guys are going to laugh at me in the comments, but I am not good at that one-handed. All right. So then that separates our smaller wiring harness. So now it's loose, and you can get it completely out of your way. And then that leaves you with your one Christmas tree connection back here. And we'll disengage it real quick. And then we will be in pretty good shape. And that's why you leave your bolt in there, so you can get that loose. And then you can set both of your main connectors out of your way, and there you are, voila. So now we can remove our bolt from our dipstick, because that's going to have to come out as well, and we can move it. Just be very careful with what you're doing. So now you're ready to start attacking your lines. Let me give you some advice about the lines. Shop guys that might be watching this before they do it, you guys do this however is best for your shops, you know, or whatever. If you got the correct line wrenches, you can just about sneak through this without maybe having to take every line off of the rail to remove the rail. We're going to take all the lines off here. Doesn't hurt anything to do that, obviously. Either way, I just wanted to make mention of that. I mean, if you got the right line wrenches to where you can come in and get these from, you know, from a different angle than just a normal open-end wrench. Most of our guys that are watching this are probably going to be doing this with normal open-end wrenches, so that's what we're going to use. So 19 metric, we'll start working through our lines here, and I'm going to show you. I like to make marks on our feed tubes right here, and I haven't done it yet. But what I like to do is I like to put 3 dots on each one of these. I like to put a dot on the line. I like to put a dot on the feed tube hold down cap nut, and then a dot on the block. And then those 3 will be lined up. So if you're in a position where you can't get a torque wrench in here too, you can get pretty well close enough by lining up all of those dots. and then getting things. And what I'm really looking for is to make sure that it doesn't dislodge the feed tube hold down nut. And the reason why that's important is because if you dislodge that feed tube hold down nut, that's going to allow just bypassing to your injectors. It's going to cause you hard start, like power, things of that nature. So we don't want to do that. And another thing I want to make mention of, when you remove this fitting from the crankcase filter, put it back in because the oil will run down the valve cover there. So I had to do a little bit of cleaning and get that all cleaned back up. I'd forgotten about that. So you just put it back in. It's not in your way when you're going to do lines or anything like that. And if it does get in your way, then just simply unscrew it and clean up your mess and put it back in. So, all right, we're going to mark these lines. I'm going to come back and show you what some of the marks look like and what I'm talking about. I marked the nut end to the rail end, and then I know what I'm up against there. So, all right, we're going to do some marking here, and we'll come back and show you that and show you a few of the lines removed. Just wanted to show you guys what I was talking about the marks. I put a really small mark there on my cylinder head, one on the injector hold down nut, and then one on the line. And then when I go back, it's just, you know, it's just a real rough end way of getting where you need to be on your torque, especially if you're in a place where you can't get a torque wrench to or something of that nature. So, and then I mark line side as well, small mark there and small mark on the rail. Now, I use paint pen, you know, obviously a little bit of brake clean. We clean that off for the customer. Some of you guys that like to mark lines after they've torqued them, you can still go back and do that if you clean that up behind you. So just a thought for you guys, you know, for your disassembly. That is a 17 metric. Then you do need to remove your CP3 feed line that comes from the rail down to the CP3, and then the connection on it is at the CP3 right there. So we will be removing it as well. It actually doesn't need to be as removed. You can loosen that and then just lay that line out of your way, you know, get it out of your way for there. So all right, let's keep plugging. Something we don't talk about enough about injection lines, and I failed to mention it because it's just something you think that, you know, everybody knows, but on an injection line, or really any fuel line, if you're removing the fuel line as a whole, it is best to loosen both ends of the fuel line. And what you'll find is that once you loosen both ends will then spin much more freely. And I know that you're saying, I say that, and you're at home, you're like, well, yeah, duh, Wade. But if you try to take one end loose of the line, say you take it loose at the injectors, it will have a lot more tension at it. It will be a lot harder to turn. And because it's in a bind, because the other end's not loose. And once you loosen the other end, then everything is much easier to talk about. So, or to loosen up, apologize. I got some crap in another 6.7 video I did, a couple of comments, and that I didn't show the number 5 line and get to the number 6 line. I'm going to show you number 5 now. Number 5 is not as tricky, and I made mention of this in the other video. I've got a bunch of different 19 metrics. I've got some open ends, I've got some line wrenches, I've got some long ones. Long ones are nice up here, 1 through 4. When you get to lines 5 and 6, it's when you're going to start working in this the shorter wrenches. This is an old Craftsman 19 metric with a 17 on the other end. It is a perfect size for the 6.7s, just depending on the positioning of that line nut, or I'm sorry, of the injection line position, well, the line nut, that it's just short enough to go underneath of that cowl. And if it's super tight, you can take another opening end, or you can take the close end of another wrench and just make a fulcrum with it, a little cheater bar, and then that's how you get that. So I've got the number 5 line done here. And then what we'll do is we'll try to set up a little bit of a camera shot, maybe with as best we can, showing you what we do on 6. So you can see that double open-ended wrench right here. So now it's the 17 metric, the other open end of that is facing us now. And then I just take the box end of another wrench and just make leave it there. And once you get it started, once you get it loose, it's all yours. You just kind of keep working around. And at that point, once it's loose, you can take your stubby wrench and you can get back there and get on it. Remember what I just said about loosening both ends. Once you get the other end, the rail end of it loose, it will really help you to be able to get the injector side of that line loose. You're back there working in a blind hole, so you want to try to give yourself every opportunity that you can for success. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to loosen this up, and I'm going to go back here with my 19 stubby, and we can go ahead and get the dreaded number 6 line loosened up and out of our way.
All right, I wanted to expand on the number 6 line again because I thought back on the last video that I did on a 6.7 truck, and I had a lot of people, you know, made mention of the number 6 line, and in that video, the line shield was lined up absolutely perfect, and you know it was open end wrench, loosen it, and you had enough stroke with that with an open end wrench that you know it buzzed right off. And a lot of people in the comments are like, man, that number 6 line is not that easy, so on. So I wanted to talk just about a little bit about that. So the line shield that we're talking about is on the back of the head on the, I think it's the 2010 and up trucks, and I've circled it here for our shot. It makes it really, really difficult, and you can see in the blueprint here that the line shield has got a little bit of a curve to it, and what happens is the mounting points of the line shield are slotted, so it's not an exact tolerance. So when they put one of these on the engine, it can be, you know, quite a few different distances away from the line itself. Well, what happened with this truck, after we got done shooting the portion of it talking about the number 6 line, I had got the initial loosening done of the line, but when I found when I got back into the truck to go ahead and loosen it up, I was in a position to where the line itself, the lands of the line nut was in a position to where I didn't have really anything that I could do there. So what I do on that is I'll go on the back of the block, and there's just 2 bolts that hold this to the block, and I'm going to take you underneath the truck. I'm going to show you where they are, show you getting access to them, and we'll show you another portion of this. You can loosen this up. These are 20mm bolts. You can loosen those up. They're 13 metrics. And that will give you just enough slack, or that'll give you enough distance between the number 6 line, which will be right here, and that line shield, and then you can get a wrench in there and you can actually have more room for actuation of the wrench to be able to get that line off. So if you're watching this in this video and you're on that number 6 line, you're probably hot and mad and so on. And the way these trucks are set up, you just can't get a good shot in here, but we're going to try the best that we can. But I wanted to talk about that line shield, and I'm going to show you where it mounts to the block. I'm going to show you what I do to loosen it up. If it's in a position to where you can't get another bite on the line, that will show you loosening that up. And another thing that I was going to talk about on the rail, while we're underneath it here, I'm going to show you this as well. I think it's the 19 and up trucks, I'm pretty sure that's correct, have the, what I call secondary regulator, and that's probably bad terminology. I think DRV is the proper terminology for it. But basically, it's a secondary regulator for regulating return fuel at the line. Basically, it's now an electronic fuel pressure relief valve, or FPRV. That is located on the back of the line as well. You can access the, and on this DRV, the way this was pointed after it was tightened in the line is straight down, super easy to access from underneath of the truck. You can access it on the top side too. It's just one of those things where on the 5th gens, especially on line of sight, you cannot see back there to see it. So we're going to get it underneath the truck. So we're going to show you that. We're going to show you loosening up these 2 bolts on that line shield so we can get to that number 6 line. Let's talk about wrenches for that number 6 line and for the lines as a whole. The long reach wrenches are the ones that I really truly like on this. I mean, it's, you know, it doesn't matter what the brand is, but you know, your average wrench, your average Craftsman wrenches, let's just call it, is this length right here. You got your long reaches in most of your other brands that offer that. That just makes it super easy, especially when you get underneath of the cowlet hood. You've got more leverage and you can push down on that, and we've showed you that. But on that number 6 and the number 5 line, to be honest with you, there's a couple different configurations that you may need. These open-ended wrenches like this, maybe an offset open-ended 19 metric is really nice to have. And I'll show you something that I do. If you've got a line that you just can't get, you just can't get the stroke to it, or whatever it is, you've moved your line shield around, I would go down to your local Harbor Freight or wherever you can buy a tool that you don't mind to cut on. if you cut relief in a 19 metric wrench on the box end of it, that makes it really nice in working on these lines, because then you can slip over the line. You know, obviously you can get line nut wrenches like this, but the nice thing about a wrench like this is it's 12 point, so you can index it in smaller increments to be able to get to the spot that you need to. So if you're in your driveway and you're watching this video, you're like, man, I cannot get this, and you're just very, very frustrated, slip down, find yourself a 19 metric that you don't mind to cut on, cut yourself a little bit of relief in it so you get over the nut, and then that'll give you a lot more access back there to be able to work with it. And it's super handy to have. I mean, it's really super handy to have. Sometimes I'm not always you know, really excited about using an open-ended wrench on a line nut. I mean, it is what it is, but this, you know, just makes it handy for you, nice. I even put that in a vise and bend it just a little bit. That keeps it away from the lines, just depending on where I locate it. And just easy to have. So we're going to take a GoPro, we're going to jump underneath the truck, we're going to show you those 2 bolts, we're going to show you unplugging the secondary relief valve, and then we'll go back up top and show you how to pull the rail out.
All right, folks, we're underneath the truck, and I'm going to point out those 2 bolts that hold the line shield that are on the very back of the head. These are 13 metric headed. They are 20 millimeter in bolt length, so you can loosen them up a pretty good bit to give yourself some slack in that line shield. So I'm going to touch the line shield with my magnet. This is what we're fighting. And here's its 2 bolts. Here's the top one right here that my magnet's on now. And then here is the bottom one right here that my magnet is on now. You can back those out with the 13 metric wrench, and that'll give you a lot more slack in that line shield to where you can really work with that number 6 line. And while I'm down here, I'm just going to go ahead and show the show that secondary regulator to you folks. I've already got it unhooked. You can see the connection right here. This is like those where we're used to seeing in fuel pressure sensors, that type of clip, nothing funky on it, doesn't have any safety clips on it. And then there is that secondary regulator that's on the back of the rail that we've already unhooked it because I'm already down here. You can do it from the top too. I mean, you've got a pretty good gap right in here to be able to get your hand, but I just went ahead and did it while I was down here at the bottom. So we're good to go. Just wanted to show you that. It might be a little bit overkill, but I know that there's probably somebody in the driveway right now that's having problems getting to that number 6 injector line. We want to show you these 2 bolts. Just make it easier on your life. You can loosen those up real quick. Doesn't take but just a second, and then the number 6 line will be a lot easier for you. Okay, so I've got a GoPro shot here, just trying to show you as much as I can. So you can see our number 6 line we've got it loosened up, and you can actually take it and move it away. You can actually flip it back if it'll stay back there, and that gives you really, really good access. It does not have to come completely off. Next, this is your fuel return line. This is a 17 metric headed bolt that is going to have banjo washers on either side of it. It is a banjo bolt. You just need to go ahead and loosen that up and remove it. Again, 17 metric is the size on that, and we will remove it. I'm not going to be able to do this here with you guys on the GoPro. Maybe I can. I'm trying to get real fancy. Nah, I need where the GoPro is. So 17 metric, just get back there, and I'll try to get back in here and show you the banjo bolt being removed. So we brought our GoPro in here. We're just going to try to show you a few shots in here. I don't know what the light's going to happen. So we've got our banjo bolt loosened up, so they'll be, as a banjo bolt always does, it's got a washer on the top and the bottom of it. So see that I've got my washer out. But I think one of the most important things that you got to do here is this return line on the 19 up has got a little bit of flex to it, but not a ton, and you don't want to grab it and try to twist it around too much, because you just don't want to do that. So a couple different things you can do here. You can go ahead and go ahead and start removing the rail, and then as you're moving the rail around, that gives you a little bit of access to get that bottom washer is what we're trying to work on here. See, you can just barely can pick that up, but man, you got to get that washer out of there. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and loosen our rail up. So there's 2 10 metrics left here. I hope the GoPro's showing the positioning of those. They're right against the valve cover here. We'll go ahead, and I've already loosened them up quite a bit.
my bolts. Perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this rail, and my intention here is just to get better access to that bottom washer. That's all I want. All I'm working on right now is getting to that bottom washer from that return line there. And what I'm working with here is just my little O-ring pick. And there we go. Bring it out. We'll make sure you get that. I just put it back with my banjo washer so I don't lose it. And then there's a little bit of a sequence here to get the rail out. I just kind of pull forward just a little bit, and then that'll let you rotate it. You can rotate it towards the driver's side and then just lift the rail straight out. Now with the fuel rail removed, we've got 4 bolts left to be able to go ahead and remove this entire intake plenum. In preparation of this, what it is, I ran a vacuum around that intake there and just sucked up all the leaves and junk that was in this engine compartment here around that intake. So I'm gonna point to the 4 bolts that are left here. You got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all I'm using here is just a little swivel head ratchet with a 10 metric on it. And we'll just go ahead and remove these 4 bolts, and then we'll be ready to remove the plenum here. So again, it's here, 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 and right here. So you all don't need to sit here and watch me remove these bolts. I would suggest using a longer ratchet the way I am here, and just be careful of your electronic sensors, like that intake air temperature sensor there. Just be aware of those sensors and their locations and stuff. Don't hit them with the swing of your ratchet, but if you use like a flex head ratchet like I'm using here, you can get into a position that gives you clearance between the cylinder head and the plenum there. So you can get straight away on your bolt. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through and we're going to just pop these bolts out, and then we'll turn back on when we go to pull the intake plenum out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remove our intake plenum here, and the plate is held after the fuel rail comes off of it. There's still going to be 5 10 metric headed bolts that are holding it to the intake shelf here. You've got a bolt here, 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 silver bolt here, and then one back there behind the intake air temperature sensor. Okay, so these are all, again, 10 metric headed. You can pull those out. What I do before I pull all this, I try to vacuum around here and get everything good and clean before I pop this off. And then I'm going to show you what I do. So on this intake plenum on the 6.7 trucks, right here where the intake runner, or where the intake the actual plenum was, there's just a little tab here. Okay, you can just grab a hold of it and you can kind of work up on it, and that'll let the plate break loose right there. So we've got everything already loosened up for you, so you don't have to suffer through watching me run a ratchet. I'm going to pull our bolts out here. Okay, and I'll drop those in the thing, and then we'll just go ahead and bring our plate out. Really easy, like so. And here's our, show you on the GoPro, and I'm sure we'll look at this out on the table, but here's our bolt that always comes in question. That was still pretty good and tight. Looks real good, but you can see the soot build up in there and everything. You can kind of look at that bolt the way it is. Again, this is a 21 truck. It's tight, but I mean, we see later model trucks that have had them fall down in. And then the bolt that runs horizontally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I mean, that nut can back out and fall off there. So to me, I don't like that either. I don't like anything about this setup. But really, the one thing that we just don't, this whole job is to keep this power supply to the grid heater from this bolt from dropping into the motor and causing us all a problem. And that happens. It's a very well documented case inside of this. This is a really, really bad design.
But the airflow, because of the grid heater, I mean, it just, once these trucks emissions equipped, the amount of soot that is passing through the engine because of design, the soot being a particulate matter, for lack of a better word, a solid, I mean, it just collects on this grid heater, with everything that goes into it, the EGR, the PCB, all the things, and just really chokes down the airflow through this thing. So I know early iterations of the Cummins, the 5.9 motors, the 6.7s, we had a grid heater. We didn't really see, or the 5.9s, we didn't see this, but we also didn't have the emissions equipment that is contributing to the re-entry of the exhaust gases into the intake. So yeah, a lot of different things going on here. So we will run a vacuum through here again. We've got a gasket that's still going to be here. This is a pretty newer truck. You can see it's probably going to come out in one piece for us. Sorry, I was right in the way of the camera for you right there. And that's what we'll do. We'll just kind of keep fooling with that and see if we can get that to come out in one piece, just like it did right there. And then we'll get everything vacuumed out here and get cleaned up and get ready to install our fleece plate.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start assembling our intake plenum here before we go back on the truck. This truck, again, is a 21, I think 21, 22. So the orientation on this, on the 19 plus pickups, is going to be different, you know, for the different years. And I'm not going to call them all out. However, if something is whatever is different to you as you're watching this, just know that everything is in the kit from Fleece to be able to make it all work. So with this being a 19 pickup, we don't have the map sensor that's in the intake plenum itself, or the runner itself, but the air intake temperature sensor is in here, so we will roll it over. Now you'll see that your plenum is not threaded for this the way this one is. No problem. You've got enough distance in your harness to be able to roll this over, and we're going to move it to this position. So you'll use your stock washer with this, and it's just a normal one. That's going to be suited up pretty bad. I'd like to put some brake clean on, but that's just going to go right here. So let me clean that up real quick, and then actually, you know what, I can clean that up off camera. Insert that back in, tighten it down. Then on this card from Fleece, you've got everything that's color coded. You're going to need this mat block off and the little bolt that corresponds with it. So they're all here in the same little package. So this block off is going to go right here, and then it is threaded. So the correct plug for that is going to be on our blue dot here. See our blue dot, this green dot one, I'm just going to set it aside. Our blue dot plug will go in there. So let me set that aside so you can see our plug is going to go right here, just to seal that off, because this is going to be an unused port for us. And then Fleece provides us with the bolt for this that we need, and I know exactly what's going to happen here when I do this. This is going to go flying across the shop. So let me find my pocket knife here. All right, then you got your bolt. That is we'll call it white. It's the white portion right there, and then you'll just simply you can lubricate that O-ring on that plug, and then lubricate the O-ring on your block off plug here, and then install that here into the plenum and tighten it down using the bolt provided by Fleece. And then I'll get the air intake temperature sensor cleaned up, and then I'll reinstall that. And then we'll cut back in and we'll show you what that looks like before we go to clean it up on the truck. All right, so we've got Fleece's intake plenum already assembled here and ready to go back in the truck. So a couple things we want to talk to you about. So our intake air temperature sensor goes into our new port right here, which when it came off of our old one, it was right here. So the way that Fleece has done this plate is, again, to fit for the cabin chassis and the pickup trucks. So on the cabin chassis, your map sensor would have been here, intake air temp would have been here, but on this kit, they have just move the intake air temp back into this position, and then for the non-cabin chassis trucks, for the pickup trucks, this one gets blocked off. So we have our adapter and our plug that go in there, 7 metric, holds the adapter in, and then you have your plug that's a 5 metric Allen right there. And then don't forget on these, I guess it's the 19 plus trucks, this bolt right here, you will be reusing it, that stock hardware right there. Fleece is going to have you install 4 of their metric 8 by 1.25 by 2.5. That's the green portion. Those 4 are going to be installed in the plate in this position, here, here, and then right here as well. Before you go into the truck, you'll want to grab your gasket kit that comes from Fleece, and you'll want to get your new intake gasket and take that with you. But again, you'll grab 4 of these bolts, take those with you. I've got everything tightened down here, tighten it to the torque spec that comes in your install instructions there. I think this was 80 inch-pounds for those, so we've got that ready to go. So we've got the intake shelf cleaned up inside the truck. I'm going to show you that and show you what we did to clean that up, and then we're going to install our little intake plate here. All right, we're in the engine bay now, and just going to show you cleanup on this intake runner right here. What I like to do is I'll just use, when I first take it off, I'll use just a gasket scraper. I'll go through and I'll get the big portions of the gasket off of here, and then I'll come back with a Scotch-Brite pad and some brake clean, and then get the surface really good and clean, and then wipe it down one more time. Then I'll take a vacuum after I get done with all that. I'll take a vacuum and I'll pull any of the large pieces of sediment that fall down the intake runner. I'll pull those out with a vacuum and have everything nice and clean, ready to accept our gasket. So Fleece sends us our new gasket. I want to show you this in the close-up picture here. And they call this portion of the gasket, let me lay it down here real quick so I can show you guys. There's a portion of this gasket that is wider, and they call this the non-cutout portion. The non-cutout portion goes to the outside of the intake and towards the back of the motor, and you don't want to reverse that and put the cutout portion on this side of the intake, or you don't want it down near the actual intake horn itself side. Reason being for that, if a portion of this flakes off, it's going to go through the intake at that point and could cause damage. So that's the way these gaskets are made. So yeah, we don't want that going through our intake there. So we're going to leave the gasket just exactly like that, and I am going to reset up my GoPro, and then I'll show you putting the intake plate on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bring our Fleece intake plate in here, and be ready. Try to stay out of the way of the camera. So just bring our intake plate in here and kind of roll it in underneath of our dipstick tube there, and then you just want to kind of check alignment. Fleece says that you can put a bolt in here into this corner to help you with orientation of your gasket. It doesn't hurt a thing to do that. So we're using our metric 8 by 25 millimeter bolts that go in the shallow portions of the intake plate. We're just going to go ahead and get those inserted now. I'm working with my gasket as I go to kind of keep everything lined up. No problems, no problems. I use the stock bolt back, but you get an extra bolt with the intake kit. This is the 35 millimeter bolt. This goes in the closer to higher portion of the intake plenum right there. We'll just go ahead and install that. Okay, and then we remove our 25 metric bolt and then put it in the back, very back outside corner of the plate. And there we go. And then we're going to go through and we're going to torque everything down to 18 foot-pounds, and we kind of want to do that in just a crisscross pattern. You know, we're not setting no records here. It's just try to keep it in a good crisscross pattern so you get a good even seal on this. So we'll run everything down here. And in fact, what I'm going to do, run this down just a little bit more for us here. And what I'll do, I don't think this is a very good shot. I'll click our first
torque off here. All the other holes are lined up, looking good. Gasket still looks to be in a good position here. There's our click. And then again, we'll just keep going in kind of a crisscross pattern here. And then that'll be it. So 18 metric on all 4 of the Fleece provided bolts, and then our 35 metric at the top of the plate. We'll tighten it down as well. It's time to install our fuel rail now. So before we go with our fuel rail installation, we want to make sure that we clean all the ports out and around the threads really good with brake clean. This is one of these steps that you cannot skip. If you don't clean these components out really good, you run the risk of a very small piece of debris going in your injectors and hanging in the control valve or in the nozzle, and there you are. So remember our installation steps here. When the rail goes in, we kind of go in with it just a little bit canted there, and then once it gets past our electrical connections, we can start making the turn. And get everything lined up there. And with our, so this being the 5th gen, we've got 3 mounting points, but we're only going to go back with the 2 bolts at the engine side of that. Now, Fleece provides new bolts of these for you. These are 50 metric, 50 millimeter length, and I'm going to put my 2 in at the closest to the engine. The reason why I'm only using the 2 is because remember, we removed the bolt in the 3rd position. So we have access to move our oil dipstick around and just get just basic access to just about everything. So if you want to make sure that everything is lined up there, you can put the bolt in while you're going through your tightening sequences, which I suggest that you do, and just run it in finger tight. And then come back with your torque wrench, and you want to torque these 2 down. These are 10 metrics. You want to tighten those down to another 18 metric and click that off.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right, we're going to do a return line bolt. Hey, remember what I talked to you all about. Your return line's got a banjo washer on the bottom of it, and you've really got to work to get the orientation on that right. So we got our washer on the top of the bolt and ready to go, and we'll just kind of start our bolt down in the return line there, and then we try to bring the washer to meet it ever so gently. It's just a bump from the position I've got it in right now. You kind of know when you got it engaged right, because it'll just have a really nice slight tension on it. If it's not a slight tension, then you're more than likely you're cross threaded there, so you need to back it up and do it again. Do not cross thread it. It's just as important to clean this port out as it is any of the others. Once you do it, and we'll tighten this down. And then after we've got our return line tight, we'll start working on our high pressure lines. Our high pressure lines, we want to make sure that we get those very clean before we reinstall them. That it is crucial. Again, just a small contaminant that goes through one of these common rail injectors is likely to hurt the injector and cause you to have to tear everything back down. And what do we not want to do? We don't want to have to tear everything back down. So we're going to be good and clean as we go back with the job. All right, so there's our return line, and we will get down and clean out our high pressure lines and be ready to hook everything back up. All right, we got our return line on back there and we got it tightened down and got everything going back there. So the two lines that we were left with that didn't come off of the truck and we left on the truck just for the disassembly process was our supply line going from our CP3 to the line, and then the number 6 line back there. You can see I pulled those off real quick and cleaned them out real good. So you want to make sure that you clean all the high side lines out. For that, we just use just brake clean, and you want to try to keep your brake clean to the inside of the lines and then the threads of the line nuts. The reason being is these common rail lines have got a protective film on them. I guess it's a corrosive film. When that comes in contact with brake clean, it wants to kind of peel off a little bit. So it just makes another contaminant that you can reintroduce to the system, and you've got to really, really be careful of that. So when I brake clean these lines out, I'll make sure that I keep it to the tube inside of the fuel line itself, and then I clean the inside of the threads of the connector, and then that's as much as I do. So I try to be conscious of that. So, you know, you see our marks that we had on here. Tighten these down. I'll just tighten them down till they snug up, tighten up pretty good, and get as close to lining my my paint dots up, and that's going to be our way we go here. So first we'll do our service line, our supply line that goes to the rail. Then I'll jump back there and I'll grab that number 6 line and I'll tighten it down. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go underneath of the truck. I'm going to put the fuel line supply shield on and tighten it back down that I showed you in the removal. And then I will hook up the electrical connector to the DRV, or the secondary regulator. I'll hook that up on the back of the rail, and then I'll finish out by coming up to the top side here and doing the rest of my fuel lines. So we're under the truck. We just wanted to show you here. Do not forget to reconnect the wiring harness for your control valve here at the back of the fuel rail. So line it up, push it till it clicks, and then on your fuel shield, we've already tightened that up, but you want to make sure that it has slots in it so you can position it a couple different ways. You want to make sure that it's got clearance on that number 6 line before you tighten it down. So we've got all that done. We're done underneath of the truck. We're back up and we're going to finish out installing the rest of our high pressure lines. All right, just show something to you on the number 5 line here. What we do on the number 5s is we'll leave it disconnected from the front and just kind of flip it back, and then run the nut side at the block down, and then bring the rail side up and just get it started. But the wrench that's real nice for this is our little 12-point line wrench that we kind of made there, and just cut the relief in it, because you've got the 12-point indexing there, and you can get to that line and run it down closer to the block, and then you can go ahead and tighten it back up with your open end. So that makes that really nice. So that's just a little tip to show you there on that number 5 line. All right, so on the number 4 line, on these trucks, I guess the 19 plus trucks, I can't remember on the number 4 how it is on the other trucks, but the number 4 line goes to the 3rd orifice on the rail, and I do different on this one. I start this one a little bit different than I do the number 5 line. I actually start at the rail first, and I just run a couple of threads on it, And then I just use that to help me guide at the feed tube side. Sorry about the bump on the camera. We're trying a new camera angle here. So I'll meet the side up at the head, and then I'll run my line nut down, and then I'll give it a couple turns with my finger like that. I think the number 4 line honestly is about as difficult as any of the other ones are. So I'll run that down just like that, and then tighten everything up. Before I start slinging the wrench in here, I will take this PCV orifice back out, and that'll give me more room to swing my wrench around here. So we'll go ahead and tighten this line up as well, and then we'll move on and do our number 3. I'm working on our number 3 line. Number 3, just set it in here. I actually will line it up and just let the line fall into the orifice both at the feed tube and the thing, and it pretty much lines your line nuts up right there. And we'll start them just like so. Go ahead and tighten them down. You leave your PCV fitting out for this as well, and just so you can swing a wrench, you don't have to worry about it right then. So we'll tighten this down, and then we'll do the number 2 and then the number 1. Number 2 line, again, nothing real special here. Just get everything lined up, tighten back correctly. Don't force those lines either. If you go to tighten them and they don't feel right, they're not right. So go back, loosen them, try it again, or realign your tube and get it correct. So we're on our number 1 line here, and we're just checking everything up to make sure we are correct. That way, there it is. And like that line right there, the way it was seating, and just worked with my line just a little bit, and there we go. So we will tighten this down, and now we'll be ready to start our finishing touches here. You can see that orientation there where that number 1 line just passes in front of that relief in the number 2 line. So in our kit, Fleece sends us an extension harness, and this extension harness is for the intake air temperature sensor that is now moved to the new location on this plate. It's moved quite a bit forward than it was before. You can see the normal position of it is back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and install this harness right now. And then what that is going to allow me to do, push it till it clicks, and then slide the locking tab over, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the male end of this between the number, between this number 4 and 5 injector line right there, and then that'll put me pretty close to where the stock connection is. And actually on my foam, what I've done on my foam here as well is I've made a little cut in the foam to recess that out for that to place. And the reason why I make mention of that is, even though it's not in the order I took it apart, I'm gonna go ahead and work to try to get this foam piece in before I start on my wiring harness, because I know I can get the wiring harness in, and it'd be really super nice to go ahead and just get this foam isolator in at this portion of the install than it is at any time. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to start working on getting our foam piece in. We've got that IET sensor connector lined up pretty well for us there to where we can get to it as we work our foam in here. And you've got your recess on it for the location. So this recess right here is for your rail pressure sensor. So we've got that laid down there. And then oh, sorry, one thing I forgot to do there, I forgot to remove my PCV fitting that's in the valve cover, so I'm going to unscrew it real quick. just slide it out. This piece of foam won't be no problem for us. Just like so. Alrighty. And I can set that down real nice, wrap it around our feed line as it goes right there. We've still got access with our cut in the foam. We've still got access to our electrical connector for our intake air temperature sensor. You can see it right there. And then just work it around the lines in the back. It goes around it has a recess cut in it to go around the return line there. And there it is right there. So we still got access to do our dipstick bolt. We've got access to our harnesses, our injector harnesses, and then our connector for the intake air temperature sensor is right back in here, right at our cutout where we can access it as well. So probably could use to maybe take just a fuzz more off of that, but other than that, it's in pretty good shape. So I'll probably pull that out because I'll think about it too much, and I'll probably recess that just a little bit more. Give me just a little bit more room there. So I'm probably going to do that and then fix that up, and then I'll come back and I'll show you where our connector laid out there. So it's time to do wire and harness, and before we do wire and harness, I may regret this. I'm going to go ahead and put our bolt in right here, and I'll have to come back and show you the shot. But let's just go ahead and put this bolt back in. So this is an intake bolt at the dipstick hole down here. 18 foot-pounds on the torque for that, and we can come back and torque this. I'll just snug it down real quick, but that's what we're going to do. I'm going to put that in there right now because I feel like that's going to make it much easier when I go to do my wiring harness than it would be to do it the other way. So let me grab my torque ratchet, and I'll torque that real quick, and then I will come back and show you routing of the wiring harness. Before we lay our wiring harness over, we want to come in and we want to tighten up our PCV connector here that's going in the side of the valve cover. We just want to tighten it up because we've had it out in and out a couple times with everything here. So now we're just going to route our wiring harness that goes towards the EGR cooler over here. We're going to lay that in here and just kind of get it positioned where we want it and get started through, so I just get everything kind of in the general vicinity of where it's going to go and just start working. I like to work from obviously the passenger side of the truck back over. That seems to work better for what we're doing here and these connections as a whole. So we'll start with this exhaust back pressure sensor. So we just push it on till it clicks. I know I'm out of frame here, but trust me, I'm doing it. And then the valve, push till it clicks, lock it down, and then this CCV sensor, push till it clicks, lock it down. You'll see several of the wiring harness hold downs here going around the valve cover as you go. So just push them down as you're going along. All right, so we've got another CCV connector right here. We will push this in till it clicks, and then we will lock it down. All right, and there's an injector harness connector running around back there, and then that leaves us access to the fuel pressure sensor. We will push this one in until it clicks, and the same thing, lock it down. Lock that down. We're going to leave that bulkhead connector for last. I think we can go ahead and do our front set of injector connector there. Kind of got to just give yourself a little bit of slack there with the cover, with your foam cover. So push it until it clicks. And then we have the same thing at the very back. Injector harness. But you got to be careful with this one. You gotta feel your way through it. You can bend pins here real easy. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I run into just a little bit of a spot here where I need some more slack. So I unhook that that crankcase sensor. There, we got it. Okay, now we'll hook our crankcase sensor back in. Lock it down. Then we gotta weasel our arm back out of there. Check our injector connector again. And we are good to go. So with that wiring harness, what you'll really do there is you'll just kind of follow everything around and get it all lined back up, you know, the way you want it. But for now, we're in a pretty good shape there. That gets everything done on this side that we're going to need. Now our injector, or our intake air temperature sensor is hanging back here in the back. I will jump back there and get it and hook it up before we really go any farther. And then we're going to leave the rest of the wiring harness alone and work on our intake horn going into it. So I will hook that air temperature sensor up, and I will get it going for us, and then we will be ready to move out to the shot on the fab bench and get our intake horn done. Okay, before we're not going to be connecting our crankcase lines up yet, but I just wanted to show this. The forward crankcase line actually goes behind the CP3 output line right here, so I had to loosen that CP3 output line and then move that connector back. Sorry about that, I forgot it when going back, but I wanted to make mention of it in this video. So if you get to a port where you're like, man, that seems just that forward CCV line seems a little bit short, it's because it needs to go behind that line at the CP3 output line. So we got all that squared away, and now we're moving to the bench to build our intake horn. First step in working on our intake valve, we are going to remove the throttle valve from our intake horn here. So on this ear truck, this is the metric 8s on it, so we'll just go ahead and loosen those up real quick. I don't take them all the way out, and I'll show you why. I've already been around them here because I didn't want to be beating on this thing. So once I've loosened it up, they're usually on there pretty good. I'll take a soft faced hammer like this one right here, and I'll hit around it gently until it breaks free. This one came free pretty easy, but the reason why I leave those bolts in there is because just so it doesn't go flying across the shop as you're tapping on it. So make a little contact with it, and then that'll loosen it up. So we'll go ahead and remove the remainder of the bolts. You'll be reusing this hardware back. We'll remove the valve. And then with your fleece intake there, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to your orientation of everything there as you're going along. So on this, what we'll need to do is we will need to look at our stock valve. Bolts here. What we'll do is we'll take our stock valve and we will take a gasket scraper such as so, and we'll get the big chunks up. I'll be real careful going around this because this is aluminum, so you can hurt this, so you don't have to get carried away. You're just taking the big stuff off. Like so. Okay. All right, now I like to use a Scotch-Brite pad or a lock here too, either way. I'll come around it with Scotch-Brite pad because this is what I had right here in front of me. And a little bit of brake clean.
I didn't have my air on today, or I would have hit this with a roll lock real quick. Been done, so I won't make you suffer through every action of this, but a little bit of brake clean here, and Scotch Brite pad is what I've got here in front of me, so I can go around this and clean this surface up. Just want to get this mating surface where it's really good and clean. All right, so we're going to assemble our throttle valve to our new fleece intake here. So I've got it oriented the way I want it. Fleece includes new gaskets for this as well. So your blue side of the gasket will orient that back towards the throttle valve. Put it back the way it came off of the stock valve there. So I'll just go ahead and put my couple of my bolts through here to hold the gasket and for my positioning, like so. All right. Then we'll go ahead and drop that onto the intake horn, and we'll start a couple of them. I'll put my other two in here. Turned around there where everybody at home can see it. And put my other two in as such. I'm not sure everything is good to go here. I'm just gonna run those down real quick and just touch them. And then this will get torqued to 50 inch-pounds, and we'll do that in a crisscross pattern here. So that'll have our throttle valve installed and oriented in the correct positions to where the backside receives the electrical connector. So that's got us good on that. And then the next thing that we will be doing is we will be removing the map sensor and installing it. I think that's going to be probably the easiest thing to do. So we'll just go ahead and buzz it out real quick. This is a T15 Torx that holds this into the intake horn. So we'll be removing that bolt like so, and then real gently we'll work that out. Everything here gets sooted up, so just be aware of that and don't go to prying on anything unless you absolutely have to. So if that needs to be cleaned or anything like that, it's time to do it now. This is a low mileage truck, so it looks really, really good. So I'll move the fleece intake over here, and then that goes the same way. The connector on that will go down for us. And let's see if I can get just a touch of assembly lube here. I mean a touch. Don't want that going in there dry. And I'll clean everything up around it. Make sure none of that gets to my sensor. Keep that good and dry there. So we'll go ahead and install our map sensor here. Just kind of get it oriented and make sure that when you go to press it down that your O-ring is in a good position there to where you won't creel it. Just a little bit of pressure on the top side of the sensor, and we will be home right there. I like to keep a little pressure on it, move it back and forth in the bore right there so we know that the O-ring will kind of settle in there. All right, and then we just reinstall our 15 Torx bolts, screw, and as I pull it down, try to keep top pressure on it to where it's not at a bad angle there. Just a little touch. There we go. That'll have our map sensor installed. So I'm going to reset up and get repositioned here, and then we'll do the EGR valve. All right, we're still in the assembly process of our intake. So yesterday we finished up with installing our map sensor. So now we're going to move on to our heater elements and installing those into the intake. So we're going to do that first. So just get on your card here, go to your card with the with all of the intake accessories here from Fleece. They lay the card out really nice and color code everything and show you in the instructions where everything goes. So we're going to grab our intake air heater, and then we're going to grab our heater crush washer over here. It's purple right there. So we will install that first, and the directions call for this to be installed on the back side. So you're if you don't have the secondary heater, you'll be installing this first one on the back side here. So that's what we'll do, and then the new nut for that is right there in our thing. This is a 27 metric, and doing my digging today, I found out that someone has walked off with my 27 metric wrench. So we're being really gentle here today with a 27 shallow socket, and it's just deep enough to tighten that up right there. So don't overdo it. All right, perfect. So that's got our heater installed on the back side here. So what we'll do is, if you're not going to be using the cold weather kit, which is an optional accessory with this, we will be installing our plug on the front side. And if you are installing the optional setup here, that'll go, you won't be doing that. So you want to use the heater plug, and then the 1/8 plug that goes in the center of that. This is a 1/8 plug. Again, it's already got an O-ring on it, so if you want to plumb in a boost gauge, you could do so right there. It gives you access to that with that port. Now this is a 1-inch on this, and that's a rubber O-ring seal, so you don't have to crank the guts out of it here. And then we have our little 1/8 plug, and it is O-ringed as well, and I'll grab a Allen wrench to tighten that down here before we go. Alrighty, so with this being one of the newer trucks, we do not have the intake temperature sensor that goes in the back. The 07.5 to 09 trucks, I believe it is, they would be installed right there. So we don't have that provision. So we're going to be using our metric 8 copper washer and our plug right here. This is on the black side of the card. So I had to finagle my way through it. So you want to use that copper washer on that bolt right there, and we'll tighten it up in just a second. And it goes right here in that EGR runner. And then last but not least is our stud that goes on the front right here. And I will pull that out of the, I'm going to move my card. I'm going to bring my stock intake here so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to remove that stud that is on the front here. If you don't want to use the stud back, which we are because we're going to need it for our wiring harness, you can use one of the metric 8 by 1.25 by 25 in it. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you something I'm going to do here before I put that stud in. This is going to take a heater ground cable, so we're going to install that before we put it in the truck here. And the heater cable, Fleece has actually labeled it for you. So this is intake side and this is battery negative side. We're just going to go ahead and put that on before we even put it in the truck, and then that way that'll be done and we don't have to fight it from there. I'm going to try to lay that out to where when it goes back to the battery it can go flat, so I'm going to turn that over. I don't have to twist it to get it to the flat side. So lay that out here. And we will install that. So there we go. So as you can see, I forgot to bring a couple of my wrenches with me over here. So off camera, I'm just going to tighten everything up. So I'm going to tighten up that center plug, and then I'm going to tighten up my heater plug on the back side here. And yeah, we'll be ready to drop it in the truck. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to shut the camera down here. I'm going to tighten all that stuff up, and then we will see you in the truck. And before you head to the truck, don't forget to take along your intake horn gasket will need to go with you, and then the other gaskets we'll talk about as we come to them, but don't forget to take your intake horn gasket with you as you go. All right, so we're back in the truck now, and we're getting ready to lay our intake horn in. First thing you want to do is go ahead and lay your intake gasket down, and your intake gasket, I saw Fleece when we were getting ready for this, the way they did theirs. They left the gum side of that up on the gasket, and reason for that was it's easier when you take the, if you have to take the intake off, to have to clean the gasket from the intake than it is from the runner. I agree with that. Most of the time I've seen, if you've got a gasket and you're replacing it to another surface, I would have turned it down, you know, to keep it from moving while I was putting the other component on. But you know, that makes perfect sense too. So I guess it's six of one, half dozen the other. The gasket's not directional per se, but that is a good thought, is to turn it that way. So we're going to lay our intake horn in here. So let's talk just a little bit about hardware before we get too off or carried away here. So you're going to be using 3 of the long bolts on the card, and then 3 of the 35mm bolts. And I'll tell you about that. So your 3 long bolts on the card, they've got a white backing to the card. 2 of them are 100mm in length, and 1 of them is 110mm in length. The reason for the one that's 110mm in length is because it is going to be holding down the dipstick bracket. So that is why it's a little bit longer. So it's very, very important that you don't use one of these 100 metrics in the 110 position. Now, where is the 110 position? The 110 position is on the outside, dead center of the intake horn. The reason for that is the reason why you don't want to use one of the 100 metrics is because if you do, because of the dipstick bracket, using one of the short bolts, it'll pull the threads out here. So make sure you use the 110. So just kind of sit it to the side from your bolts so you have access to everything you need here. So go ahead and pull my cap off, and then I'll do my orientation of my clamp. I'm going to turn my clamp with the bolt to the front here. I think that'll work a little bit better for me going back with it. So I'll see. I may be dead wrong on that too. So I've got my cord already in here, so I'll just kind of route it back the way I want it to go, and then I'll start my intake into the intercooler boot first, and then I'll just turn it around like so, and then I'll be ready to come down here onto the intake plate. Try to keep your gasket where you want it to be. Okay, so first one I've got is one of my short ones. This is the 35 metric length short bolts. They are under the red portion of your card. So I'm going to drop one right here in the corner, and that's going to catch that gasket corner for me. That's the one I can see the best, so that's the one I know that I've got in a perfect position. And then what I can do is grab myself a different light, and then I can look at these other holes to make sure they are lined up with the gasket as well. Looks like they are, and looking really good. So we will go ahead and install those. The back one here is just a little bit hindered by the front PCV outlet here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buzz that out real quick. Probably should have already had that done. Sorry about that, folks. I'm going to buzz that out real quick, grab a wrench on that. But then I've got another one of the short ones lined up here in the middle, ready to go for us. So I can drop that bolt in as well. Work it. There we go.
And I'll just take my socket here. I like it when I got two of them already. And drop my socket right out of the gate. There we go. Perfect. So, all right. So that's got one of them started in there, and then just keep working with my gasket alignment. And I can really, before I go and get my ratchet, I can drop in my other one here. So there's my third one. So I'm gonna grab a wrench real quick, and I'm gonna buzz that PCV fitting out, so I can get to those and I can start those three, and then we'll work on our back ones, and I'll be back with you in just a second. So we got our fitting out of the crankcase there. I should have done that to start with. So, and then we got our back bolt in too. So now we're gonna work with our two long bolts here, and then our bracket. So this is our, I know we've got our longest bolt here, right here in the middle. So we'll go ahead and grab our dipstick bracket, and our dipstick bracket just goes in the little recess of the fleece intake here, and then our dipstick goes on the very top of that. So we'll just go ahead and pass that bolt through and work it around our dipstick, and we'll work around our, just hit a couple threads. Now we will throw our other 200 millimeter ones in. We're going to leave our dipstick off of the thing so we can move everything around. Everything runs in good here. Thing down. I'm not going to snug my middle one down. I'm going to get it in a position here. I'm going to snug everything else down though. And then we have our other intake bolt that is a 35 metric in length. This is a stock one that this is actually the one for our dipstick right there. Well, it's 35 metric in length. And we will start that one right here, and we will tighten it down. But what we're going to do now is we're going to torque our intake bolts. So our 6 intake bolts, they are 18 foot-pounds, and we'll do it kind of in crisscross pattern to, for lack of a better word, to torque everything down correctly. So I'm going to run grab my torque wrench. I'm going to torque all these off, 18 foot-pounds again, and then we'll come back and we'll show you the finishing steps here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our PCV connector in here, and we will tighten it down. If I had it to do over again, I probably would have left my injector connector loose. So that's the one thing I'll take away from this, is I probably wouldn't have done that, but I'm here and I got it and all the things. So there we are. So we will tighten that up just a little bit, because it is plastic and it will break. And it is important to make sure that you tighten that back up, because it will slobber oil on you. And then we're going to get our back one as well. Make sure it's snug down. We don't have any oil leaking on us. Alright, so that's good and that's good. All right. Just a little bit more. All right, so that's got that. So here's what we're going to do now. We tighten this front bolt down now, so we're going to continue with our electronic hookups through here. So we've got 3 on this 5th gen truck on the back of it here. So our first connector is going to be here at the map sensor. So we'll go ahead and make that connection. Just push it until it clicks. I think you grab the right one here. So our gray connector goes on it. Push that till it clicks. And then our large connector goes on the throttle valve itself. This is the control wire for our EGR, so we're good to go there. And then we need to tighten up our 11 metric down here for the for our clamp at the intake horn. And didn't have my 11 metric ready. We'll tighten this one down here as well. I like that position, and that clears for our shield. Okay. So there's that tightened down, and I'm going to grab my bolts real quick and put my shield back on. So it goes right here, and I left the bolts on the back of the truck, but I'll grab those, and y'all don't need to see me tighten those out. You got one nut that goes here, and you got a bolt that goes there. I will also connect my PCV lines. Actually, I'm going to do that when I come back here. Then I'm going to show you my this temperature sensor. We'll put it in position just like so. And then it goes to its standards here on the dipstick hold down tube, and then our EGR temp will go right back to it. And then we've got one little bolt that holds our dipstick down, so we don't need to be doing anything else with our dipstick. So that can go ahead and get tightened down. I should have got a little bit longer 1/4" drive extension to do this with. So there we go for that. All right. So let me grab these bolts and I'll finish that out, and I'll come back, and then we'll do our PCV line, show you that. Really nothing a lot to see there. I just want to make sure that I go through it and show all the steps of it, and then we're going to route our new power wires for our temp sensor before we set that EGR valve down on it. Okay, so we've got our intake horn, we got it tightened down. I put my shield on and got it tightened down. So we're in good shape there. I'll take that off just for our shot here. So I got my shield on, and I got my boot tightened down. I've put my PCV lines on. I've got them lined up. If I had that to do over again at the beginning of the shot, I would have reminded you all to put these PCV lines behind your CP3 line right here, but you know, it worked itself out. You can pop that line off and then put these PCV lines on. I'll push those the rest of the way up when I got a free hand. So really what we're doing is we're going through wiring harness, and I can tell you one thing about this truck. The wiring harness, when you put this back together, it pretty much falls back together. So my bulkhead connector, I go ahead and line it up and pop it in its place on the cowl. And then I will make this connection. There's a Christmas tree pin underneath of here that I will make. There is a Christmas tree pin that will need to go back here that I will make. There is a large loom C clamp here. I'll make that connection as well. I can't do it one-handed, but that's just going to clean that up. Now, this wiring harness is going to clip back to the dipstick with this clip. I'll move that bulkhead connector there. Or that main connector. Sorry. So you've got this clip right here that will clip this back onto the oil dipstick. This clip right here on our main wiring harness, this is not going to be used, so I'm just going to shut it and just leave it in place. Cut it if you want to. This was the connector that held the original power wire going around to the front. I just can't see that routing that way once we've got everything in here and going. So that just is not going to be used. I think that that's going to come up correctly. You know what? It might get it. Just depends on the length of it, because I'm thinking that the length of that yeah, that won't be used because I'm thinking with the length of that, that's going to go under here. We'll talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to do these PCV lines, and I'm going to clean up my connectors. I'm going to finish up this connection right here at our main connector. Don't forget your push pins at the back there, and then the one back here at the dipstick. Get all this cleaned up, and then we're going to get ready to do our ground wire. So our ground wire that is on the back of the horn that Fleece provides for us here. You can see this has to be routed. We're going to take this over to the driver's side battery and hook it on top of the terminal, and then we will zip tie it along this main wire and harness here and get all of that done. So we're also going to do that before we come back in on our power wire shot. I know not a whole lot to say here. I just want to go back over really on those main clips of where to hook your wiring harness back up. All right, we got our ground wire attached at the battery side here. I put just a little bit of a bend in there so the wire just laid better. We will put zip ties on that so it is around here to our ground. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be removing our stock power wire. So this is the stock power wire that provided power to the grid heater. And Fleece wants us to remove this. So to remove it, you just follow along, and there are clips on it right here. There's another one right under the water neck. There's one I'm going to show you that you can just see by the push pin. If you can kind of see this push pin right here, it'll actually just pop out, and that's going to be the worst one to get to. And then follow it along right over here to the relay box, and it goes in at that relay right there, 13 metric to loosen it up. So we're just going to remove this wire real quick, and then we're going to show you the routing of the Fleece power wire. All right, one thing I wanted to make mention of here is Fleece does a really good job of marking these cables. This is marked relay end, and it is also marked with heater end, as you can see right there. So pretty self-explanatory. We're going to take this one over to that here. We're going to replace the 13 metric nut that came off of it, and then we're going to just route it back around the way it came, and I'll show you once it's done. I'll trace it all around and show you where everything went to. All right, so just going to show you the power cable routing here. So we've got it hooked up to our heating element on the back side, and then we looped it over the top, really staying with the original routing of the old cable, save for the big loop that was at the back that caught that clip back there. So really just didn't have enough wire for that. So we used a Christmas tree push pin zip tie that's included in your kit. We used one here, used our original clamp here, used the original clamp there. Then you have your buried one that is underneath of here. We put that one back with a Fleece zip tie, and then we used a one of the push pins that Fleece provides right here as well. Used the original clip there, and then hooked it to its home down on the relay right there. So we're in a really good shape right there. The cable is not too tight or anything like that, and it's out of the way of everything. So we're ready now to go ahead and install our EGR valve and our crossover. So we're gonna go back on a fixed position mount on the GoPro here and get this, but we've got all this cleaned up, ready to accept the thing. We've got the mating surfaces of our EGR valve cleaned, and then Fleece provides new gaskets for you with this to make everything nice and easy for you. So we'll go ahead and just finish this out. So Fleece includes new gaskets and new bolts for your EGR valve. So we're just going to place our gaskets real quick on here, and then we will set our EGR valve down. I can't work today. All right, and then set our valve on. All right, now these bolts on the EGR valve, we're just going to run them in hand tight. We're just going to leave it loose, and that just helps us with our orientation of our crossover pipe. So we're just going to kind of hand tighten those. I'm not going to hook my wire up until I absolutely have to, because I still got to get my socket in here to tighten it up. All right, so we've got that. And I left our clamp on for our EGR crossover pipe. I actually left the little 8 metric bolt in the front of it. I left it in as well, so I'm going to unscrew it real quick for us. And then we will lay our crossover pipe in here. Just like so. And then get our gaskets situated. So Fleece provides new gaskets for you. So your metal one, your thin metal one, actually goes on the side at the cooler. So we will stick that on our pipe and then put our pipe on there. And then get our clamp on. So we want to be able to, we want everything loose enough to be able to move our, so I'll just run my 11 metric nut down here real quick, just to where that won't come off on us. Alright, so now we have our final connection point. I'm actually checking that clamp, make sure that clamp is going to line up good. And it looks like it is. You want the clamp to be able to go in front of that. So you got everything that you need right here, so you can see why you want to leave that loose now. I'm going to move my up. Then you get a new gasket from Fleece for this as well. So you just want to follow the contour of everything that's kind of, I guess, convexed. There, so we'll line that up correctly. And then that crossover pipe's got the lip inside of it to where we can make everything fit up correctly. And boom, there we are. So we will tighten these down, and then we're going to install our 8 metric bolt right here, because this one kind of stinks. And let me grab a little bit of a longer 8 metric here. All I did there was just grab me a deep well socket, put a little bit of paper towel on the bolt head itself. And I'm gonna need a little bit of an extension as well. I just used a longer extension there to get that in. And I'm not going to tighten that fully down until I've got everything lined up the way I want it, like that and like that. And then I can go ahead and seat my bolts for my EGR valve here. I know this is taking a little bit longer than what I thought it would, but fight that stupid bolt on the front of that clamp. I'll run these down just real quick. Alright, now 18 metric is your, or 18 metric, that's twice I've done that. 18 foot-pounds is your torque. And we'll do that crisscross pattern. Check them. Alright, there's that. And we will hook in our electrical connector at the back of the EGR valve here. Lock it down. Then we've got our electrical connector that needs to come to the front and hook to the wiring harness underneath of our dipstick tube there. Lock it down, and it goes on that stud right there, and then your Christmas tree pin goes back here on your shield. Voila. Now we're gonna hit our 11 metrics on the clamps. Actually, and then our last one is to tighten up our little 8 metric bolt up here at the front, and just get a little relief in it, and there it is. There's my little piece of paper towel there I had on my socket. So that's got everything on. All we need to do here is cover up, but I'm not going to put my engine cover on until I've started it, and that leaves me the ability to check for leaks and everything. So we'll clean tools up and we'll start her up and show you her running.
So that wraps up our Fleece Performance grid heater and intake upgrade kit. This is an awesome kit, y'all. This is one SKU that fits the 2007 1/2 all the way to the 24 trucks. It does the pickup trucks, it does the cabin chassis. You saw in the installation video the different configurations that are optional inside of this, meaning it works for the cabin chassis, works for the pickup truck. You saw that in the intake runner, and for the early trucks, that intake, that EGR temperature sensor, they have provisions for that. So Fleece includes everything, the kits that you need. You get new gaskets, you get new bolts, you get new everything that you need. We like the wire routing on this. We like the increased airflow that you're going to get from it. We like the one SKU that we have to carry. So guys, if you got a 6.7 Dodge, we definitely suggest doing this kit. Save yourself a whole lot of headache and having to worry about that bolt coming into the engine, and you're going to get an increased performance with this, just with the airflow that comes into the engine and getting rid of that stupid grid heater that gets clogged up with the EGR and all the things. So I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel. If you have a question about this or any other Fleece product, just give us a call. We appreciate you watching.